What is up, my homies? Today, Gray Gaming is celebrating 50,000 subscribers, and so as a special treat to you, I've decided it's about time that I answer some of your burning questions. Now, due to a lot of good questions being asked, I'm not going to be able to address all of them, but hopefully I'll be able to get to the questions you've asked today. Assuming you were one of the people who actually asked a question. Now, many of these questions are going to be pulled straight from the comment section, so a lot of them aren't going to be grammatically anything, but I mean, no judgment. It's an internet comment section. In these cases, I'll try my best to decipher as best I can. So if that sounds like fun to you, make sure your Pip-Boy is properly charged and get comfy, because I'm Gray, you're watching Gray Gaming, and today, I'm letting you write my script. So the first question, would or could you ever do a collaboration with someone? Well, I've actually already done one. Back in the day when I was just starting to get into the groove of Fallout, Rad King actually approached me and asked if I would like to be in one of his videos, and I agreed. In true Rad King fashion, he made the entire experience actually pretty fun, and I appeared as a guest narrator in one of his Fallout Bible videos. That video was tons of fun, and I think I probably watched it over a dozen times, and not for the usual narcissistic reasons I watch my own content. I did recently attempt to put together a collaboration project where I invited close to a dozen Fallout YouTubers from all over, and unfortunately that project just kind of fell apart. Now, admittedly, my timing was absolutely terrible. I tried to put this together during a period where I actually had a bit of free time because I was on vacation. It was the holidays, but as you might probably anticipate, everyone is on vacation during that time, and probably the last thing they want is somebody sending unsolicited emails to them. So people had stuff going on, and I don't hold any grudges to anyone who backed out of the project or didn't even bother responding. I'm not giving up on the idea of a collaboration, but I think for the future, I'll just let other people come to me. So I'm happy to do collabs, I'm just apparently terrible at organizing them. Which NPC do I hate the most from Fallout 4? That's a tough one. Of course, there's the usual punching bags on my channel, there's Father and there's Arthur Maxon, but at the end of the day, they're pretty much just bad leaders or bad people in general. I don't really view them as just someone that I cannot stand having to interact with in Fallout 4. I would say that title probably goes to Justin Ayo acting Jack Wang of the SRB. I seriously cannot stand that guy. How many hours do you have in Fallout 4? I don't know. Let me check. Moving on. Is my boss a synth? I'm only going to say this once. Suspect everyone, especially your boss. Where do you place Lucy from the Fallout TV show in your favorite Fallout characters tier list? Also, make that tier list. Whoa, whoa, whoa! Save something for my 100K subscriber special. Damn! Without thinking too hard about it, I would say she's definitely in my top 5. Other people I would probably mention in the same vein would be Nick Valentine, Roger Maxon, Owen Lyons, Veronica Santangelo. Why is this list so Brotherhood of Steel heavy? I should probably explore that off camera. Will this channel always be a Fallout channel, or could we expect to see you tackle other games like Skyrim or some other franchise entirely? So when I created this channel, it was never really intended to be Fallout specific. In fact, creating the channel was kind of an accident in the first place. By the time I realized that this channel was taking off and decided to make a serious go of it, the mold had already kind of been set. I've tried posting content on The Witcher, on Portal, and a few other titles, and pretty much any time that I did try to break from the Fallout formula, my channel just got buried by the algorithm. It stopped recommending my videos to pretty much everyone, and my channel's growth just completely died for several months before it finally started picking back up on the fact that I was posting Fallout content again. And this isn't even really related to Fallout. It's pretty much my channel has been typeset as a Fallout 4 channel, so series like my Legends of the Mojave, my average video has less than 1,000 views in the Legend of the Mojave series. And my channel's growth completely flatlined all the way up until the release of the Fallout TV series. Thankfully, it gave me a nice little kickstart when everyone saw that series and decided they wanted to start playing Fallout 4 again. So with that little history in mind, I'm not really against posting non-Fallout content. It just historically has never gone well for me. I did start a sister channel, Great Galaxies, so that I could would start talking about sci-fi related topics like Star Wars, Firefly, and Mass Effect, which I'll just say right now, the original Mass Effect trilogy is my favorite set of video games of all time. But even then, that channel's growth has been extremely tedious. I don't think I make more than $5 a month off of that channel. And the attention that it takes away from Gray Gaming means that I usually only publish a video about once every month or two on that channel. I have toyed with the idea of creating yet another channel that talks about fantasy franchises like The Elder Scrolls and The Witcher, but my experience with Gray Galaxies has shown that unless I could devote my full attention to YouTube, meaning no more day job, I probably couldn't get away with going that route either. The ability for a gaming channel on YouTube to switch franchises is kind of a luxury of larger channels that can weather that growth storm of not growing while they're putting in the new content, and the algorithm finds a new audience for their new content. For something like mine, it's just not in the cards just yet, and while I've learned to never say never, those contingencies just aren't something that I'm ready to plan for. At least, not yet. How are you doing today, Gray? Answer truthfully or answer American. I'm fine. In all seriousness, I'm doing pretty good. You may have noticed my voice is a bit off, and not just because my microphone is in a different spot in my studio from where I normally do because I need microphone inline with camera, but also I'm recovering from a pretty nasty head cold, so my voice is definitely not 100% this week. But with that said, I'm actually doing pretty great. Winter's over, I'm getting a lot more sun outside. Yes, I'm even paler than this sometimes, and I've dropped about 25 pounds in the past 2 months, so I'm doing great. But now I have a question for you. How are you doing today? Would you like intelligent Deathclaws and super mutants back? And if so, how would you introduce them? I mean, technically, those sorts of creatures really haven't gone anywhere. It's just that Bethesda kind of tends to focus on the East Coast where those sorts of creatures don't really exist. They have different biological and cultural roots, so they don't really follow the same development cycle as those on the West Coast. If I were to introduce an intelligent Deathclaw, I would probably do a green tech genetics type mission where you're fighting your way through a sprawling labyrinth with tons of enemies coming at you in waves, probably in like a Hidden Valley type complex. Without having to create an entire video game as context, let's just say you're there for a simple fetch quest. As you're fighting your way through the dungeon, you tune your Pip-Boy to a radio frequency that the enemy is using to communicate with each other. You hear radio chatter about how they think that their target that's holed up in the command center has broken free of containment and is trying to find its way out, only for them to later realize that you are actually a different threat altogether and that they need to redeploy their troops in order to stop you, not to try and stop whoever is in the command center from breaking out. After a while, they discover that you're listening in on their communications, and so they switch to an encrypted frequency, and when it's just you alone on the radio, another voice comes on and tells you that they are who the enemy is after, they know why you're here at this location, and they can help you get what you seek. So you fight your way to the command center, you get the code, you input it, you open it up, and it's kind of the Elder's Chamber from Hidden Valley. There's just a big wraparound overseer's desk in the middle. The entire outside of the chamber is shrouded in shadow, and of course the rolly chair is flipped to the other way so you can't see who's sitting there. So the voice addresses you and asks a bunch of simple questions, like what are your intentions with this artifact you're after? Do you understand the threat that it poses the wasteland? And if it's satisfied with your answers, the Deathclaw steps out of the shadows and into the overhead lighting, and just when you're thinking it's about to attack you, it addresses you as an equal and says that it sees your quest as an honorable one and that it wants to help. If it isn't satisfied with your answers because you chose like a renegade route or whatever, then it will say that you basically have to be stopped and that you are not worthy of whatever the artifact you're after is, and it will attack you. I mean, this is an interaction that's being written in a vacuum, so it's a lot more whole than plot, but hell, I'd play it. Why concrete? Just in full. Aesthetic? Is it a common resource? Okay, so this is in reference to pretty much the majority of my settlement builds for noob sites. I heavily utilize concrete for my settlement builds, and there's a number of different reasons for them. One is that it scales extremely quickly. You can build up and out very quickly when using concrete. You can snap walls both side to side, but also top to bottom, and so you don't have to waste your time setting up an entire floor and then snapping your walls to your floor, then build another floor above it, then snap your walls to your floor. you can build up like 3 floors at a time when you're doing concrete. So it works very well if you're trying to build large multi-story structures very quickly. Also, it's concrete that's several inches thick. It is a heavy fortification. This is a world set in the post-apocalypse. You need to be able to defend your settlement, and so thick concrete is a great way to do that. Also, the thick concrete walls are one of the few in the game that do not have holes all over in them, so they are kind of airtight. They seal out the draft, they seal out the wind, and you need that if you're trying to survive in a world where you don't have climate control systems like air conditioning and heating. There are a few other exceptions like the barn walls, but those are completely uninsulated, and so they have an R value of like 1, so still like you're not going to do a lot of surviving in that during the winter. The only other real option besides concrete for something that could feasibly sustain people year-round would be like a Vault-Tec structure, and those things are ugly as hell, and so I don't really use them that often. Have you found any mods that make playing Nuka World worthwhile after meeting Preston? Well, no, but that's mostly because I haven't been looking. And that feeds right into the next question. Why don't you use mods or glitches when you play Fallout 4? I suppose it's mostly just because I enjoy playing the games as they're intended. I like figuring out how to work within the bounds of the systems that are set in place by the developers and writers. This also gives me kind of an unadulterated view of what these games are capable of when you're playing them without any kind of mods. You're basically learning, what can I do with this game as it was written, rather than what did some random person make this game capable of doing. So when I'm doing my critiques and posing my hypotheticals like 5 easy fixes and things, this means that I don't have to differentiate between what does this game look like when it was released versus what does this game look like after I installed a whole bunch of mods. I don't want to have to differentiate between features that I inadvertently added myself and those that were included in the game because somebody dropped the ball somewhere. A lot of times I get comments in my 5 easy fixes or my settlement ranking videos or stuff like that claiming that I don't know what I'm talking about, that someone can do something that I said was impossible, but if you look closer, it's something that they're capable of doing because they're using mods. I kind of put glitches in a similar vein. I mean, yes, you are learning to use the game within the bounds of how it was written. You're making it do something that it wasn't intended to do, but it is part of the main game. You don't have to install anything extra to get these glitches to work. But most of the reason why I avoid glitches versus mods is that they're just pretty time consuming to implement. Things like the Wi-Fi power glitch. I mean, in my opinion, my Starlight drive-in tower would look absolutely amazing if I didn't have to run wires everywhere to it. But that would take so much time to implement the Wi-Fi power glitch to actually run power everywhere in that tower. This also adds tons of layers of complexity. And as I've kind of mentioned several times on this channel, I do have a 9 to 5 plus nights and weekends plus on call. If I get 2 or 3 hours to play a video game, I don't want to waste half of that time shopping for mods to make my game do something or to figure out how to make a glitch work so I can do something that I otherwise wouldn't do if I wasn't just trying to show off on the internet. So really, I'm just avoiding these things because I want to enjoy my games as much as possible, which is already pretty difficult after having to reorient your gameplay towards, I need to collect this footage so that I can use this in a later YouTube video. But with all that said, I do have a surprise planned for the end of this video, so stick around. I vaguely remember you mentioning in one of your videos that you were in the military. I would love to hear you elaborate on this topic a little. How long did you serve? Where? What were your duties? What do you believe the greatest carryover benefits of your military service are? You vaguely remember correctly. I was in the military. I spent 4 years on active duty and 4 years in active reserve. A lot of people don't know this, but everyone who joins the military signs an 8-year contract. Only a certain amount of that time is spent on active duty. The rest of that 8-year period is spent on what's called inactive reserves. Inactive reserves basically just means that if there is a draft, you are first in line to go back into the military, but you get to keep your old rank and job title. My duties... My job was mobile communications. It was my job to make sure that my unit was capable of communicating with all of the other units in the AO and make sure that Private Schmuckatelli could talk to his mom back home, or at least send an email. I learned a deep appreciation for email. I spent most of my time stationed in Virginia, but I did go on one combat deployment where thankfully I didn't see any real action. Although I volunteered several times to go on special assignments that would have sent me boots on ground to active combat zones, I thankfully was never selected for these assignments. And I say thankfully because the people who did go did not come back the same. So in hindsight of not being a reckless teenager, I am extremely grateful that I never got my wish. The greatest carryover benefits of military service for me is that it just gave me a chance to find myself. I've seen far too many people who came straight out of high school and chose to go to college not because they were interested in the additional education or because they thought it would get them ahead in life, but really it was just a way for them to figure out how to be a grown-up. It was kind of an extension of high school. It was an additional 4 years for them to get their ducks in a row and figure out what they wanted to do, and all for the low price of tens of thousands of dollars in debt. By joining the military, I basically got those 4 years to find myself absolutely free. I was actually paid to do it, and while I wasn't paid a huge amount, I was given room and board and food completely free, as long as, I was able to stand living with 40 other stinky dudes and eating food that came in boxes marked fit for military/prison consumption. I wish that was a joke, but I'm about as serious about that as I am about the toilet paper that came in boxes marked made with pride by blind people. Nothing against blind people, it's just that if there's anything I want at least a visual inspection of, it's my toilet paper, okay? Anyway, back to the subject at hand, I was able to develop my own beliefs in a sort of vacuum, free of the pressures from peers, teachers, and parents. And this is pretty common for the military. You basically get torn down in boot camp and kind of lose your individuality for a few weeks. And then once you leave boot camp, they say, okay, you know how to be a soldier, go be a person again. And you kind of get to rebuild from the ground up, which is kind of a really valuable life lesson, I think. The military also let me test drive an occupation for 4 years. And while I did decide that I could probably do this job for 40 years without blowing my head off, I did decide I didn't want to do that job for the military. So I went to the civilian world and couldn't get a job based only on 4 years of work experience. So I decided to go back to college where my GI Bill covered almost all of it. After learning to play the academic system against itself and with a modest by American standards $5,000-ish education expenses and using my GI Bill strategically where I could, I went to college for 7 years.
A lot of people go to college for 7 years.
I know. They're called doctors.
With 6 degrees in 5 discipline areas. I think that my family was relieved when they stopped getting invited to my commencement ceremonies. And I was also lucky enough to get hired by the college to replace one of my own professors before I had even graduated with my bachelor's degree. Apparently, at some point, I respect out of strength and endurance and into intelligence and luck. All of this is not bad for a simple country kid who had convinced himself from a very young age that he was too dumb for college or that college was a waste of time. My military career was rough, and even with nostalgia goggles on, it's difficult to say that I enjoyed my time in service. But my military service opened so many doors that otherwise would have been completely closed off to me. And I honestly cannot say that I would be the same man that I am today if it hadn't been for my military service. Would you ever collaborate with someone to make a mod based on your 5 Easy Fixes videos? Why the hell wouldn't I? That sounds freaking awesome. I mean, I don't have any development skills that would allow me to actually write the mods, but I would love to collaborate and maybe help a little storyboarding. That sounds awesome. If you're a modder and you want to do that, hit me up. So thoughts on Fallout 76. This is a combined question because there were several different ones all related to Fallout 76. What are my thoughts on the game? What's it like to play in 2024? What are my opinions on the new season coming up? Why don't I make videos about Fallout 76? And the answer to all of these is, I really don't give a shit. I am not a multiplayer gamer, okay? I do not like Call of Duty, Battlefield, pretty much any game that pits me against other people or puts other people in a position to make my day. When it comes to MMOs, you really don't get that, and unfortunately, the instant that I heard that griefers could just nuke your campsite, I was like, no, under no circumstances am I going to play this game. I own Fallout 76. I've owned it for over a year. I've never even felt the need to install it. There are just other single-player games that I find much more enjoyment playing. I think I'd probably have to be pretty desperate to play Fallout 76. I'm not saying it's a bad game. I'm not going to go the whole Fallout 76 isn't canon, any of that crap. I'm just really not into playing a Fallout game under those circumstances. A lot of people say, yeah, the whole griefer thing is kind of overplayed. A lot of people will say, that stuff almost never happens. You almost never even see people in your servers anymore. Like, you have to go out of your way to find people, but I mean, it's still there. And at the end of the day, like, last thing I want is to dump 2-3 hours into playing a game and have some douchebag just completely ruin it for me. All right, let's move on to something a little more positive. What was your first settlement built that you were genuinely proud of? I would say that's probably Abernathy Farm. I built some monstrosity tower build. I think it was like 26 stories in height or something like that. It was absolutely crazy. Like, I was up at the very top of the power pylon at Abernathy Farm. It was a complete empty shell. Like, only the first 3 floors were populated, and it had a rooftop garden like most of my tower builds do. And you want to talk about tedious? Try running up and down 25 flights of stairs so that you can assign people to garden. I mean, yeah, there's the Vault-Tec population management system, but you can't select which settlers get assigned to that job. And so if you want Mama Abernathy to actually work at the trader down on the 3rd floor, then you can't really use the Vault-Tec management system. That settlement was completely impractical. It was completely bland. There was like no furnishing whatsoever in that settlement, but it was the first one that I actually felt the need to take a screenshot of it. A screenshot which sadly 2 months ago, I decided I would never have a use for and deleted. Dang. Do you think that synths are people? Gen 1 and Gen 2 synths, no, they are robots. They're very clearly robots. They have some self-awareness, but not really any free will or capability of doing anything with it. Gen 2.5s like Dima and Nick, I kind of am on the fence, but I generally lean closer to them being people than not. Gen 3s are absolutely people. They are self-aware, they're sentient, they have free will, and they act upon that free will. They are capable of escaping the Institute. They're forming organizations like the Railroad to get away from and stay away from and help others escape from the Institute. I think being a sci-fi nerd has kind of made my definition of a person more malleable than I would say probably other people's are, especially if you consider the number of BOS bros who post in the comments. I mean, being a sci-fi nerd, there's tons of alien species that are obviously people, they're just not human. And if you believe aliens can be people, then what about a robot that also feels emotion, is self-aware, has free will, all that stuff? So kind of by definition, you also have to kind of recognize the fact that maybe those sorts of machines are also people, just not human. Synths, Gen 2.5 and Gen 3, I would say are definitely people. They're just not human. Have I repeated myself enough in this segment yet? Move on. What kicked off your career in video creation? Specifically, what initially and then what Bethesda/Fallout? And why did you start YouTubing and costing there? Not sure what costing means, but let's see if we can try and answer this question. So I started YouTube in late 2020. It was the year of the evil beer disease, and I was still professoring at the time. And by state law, anyone who came into school showing any signs of illness whatsoever, whether they were student or faculty, had to be sent home, and they had to either show up to school with a negative vid test or they had to be 10 days symptom-free. So basically, if you got the sniffles, you were guaranteed to miss 10 to 20% of your entire semester. This was not acceptable to me at all. I worked in a very fast-paced program. If you missed even 2 or 3 days, you were drastically behind, no less missing several weeks. So I started my YouTube channel that I called Brainmelt University as kind of an inside joke between me and my students. So if you have some sort of problem you're focusing on and you've been fixated on it for hours and you can't solve it, you are suffering from a condition I call brain melt. So that's why I called it Brainmelt University, kind of teaching you how to deal with brain melt. So I started posting highly condensed versions of my weekly lectures on my YouTube channel, Brainmelt University. I mean, I didn't really lecture. I operated a flipped classroom, so I didn't lecture in the strictest sense, but it basically covered all of the material you could expect to discuss as a group if you had actually been allowed to go to class. And so I had been doing YouTube for years. It was kind of this exact format that you're seeing now, except for much lower production quality. So that channel has recently been rebranded to Gray Gadgets to kind of fit my current branding theme. But I mean, all of the videos there are still Brainmelt University. They're still educational computer networking and cybersecurity stuff. So I've left the videos up there in case anyone can actually get some benefit out of them. But I haven't posted there in, I think, close to a year, if not over a year. Now, when I was preparing to leave the world of academia and go back to my roots as someone working in IT, I really didn't want to leave my fellow professors and my students hanging, because 2 weeks notice notice in the academic world just isn't enough. Basically, you need to give them 6 months to a year of notice if you're going to leave, and that just didn't work out. So I gave my boss kind of a alternative that would let me keep teaching through my contract year in 2022, but, take on my new job that paid twice as much and do both of them side by side. And she agreed. All of a sudden, there I was with imposter syndrome kicking in, where I was about to start working a kind of area of my profession that I consider to be my weakest. And now I also had 2 weeks to figure out how to transition 20 semester credits of classes into an online format. So I was desperate to kind of take my mind off of what I was about to be doing for the next 6 months. And one of the things I decided to do to kind of disassociate from the world was to go hunting for badges in Steam. Completely pointless waste of time, but it's as good of a coping mechanism as any. And one of those badges required me to post video footage of me playing a game and link it to my Steam account. So I did a settlement walkthrough video of my Starlight Drive-In Tower build, and because the badge didn't immediately pop, I posted a second one of Kingsport Lighthouse. And once the badge popped, I kind of forgot that this channel that I created, Gray Gaming, because I was definitely not going to post video game footage on my educational channel, I just kind of forgot it existed. So over the next 6 months, I just kind of hunkered down. I learned my new job. I dealt with my classes online. And once my contract had finally ended for the college, I decided I should probably go in and delete that other YouTube channel. Those 2 terrible quality settlement videos had gotten more comments, more likes, more engagement, and more views than my entire Brainmelt University channel had in the years of carefully curated and lovingly produced content on that channel. So I decided to see what would happen if I just hunkered down and tried to make a serious go of things. I worked on my microphone filtering, I worked on recording better quality content, and 3 months from that decision to actually try to make Gray Gaming a thing on the internet, I was monetized, and I really haven't looked back since. Now, like I said, I have started my sister channel, Gray Galaxies, to talk about sci-fi stuff, but that channel has not experienced the same level of success or growth, and it makes pennies a month. And so for the foreseeable future, Gray Gaming is my primary hobby / side gig / creative outlet. What food would you try from Fallout? I really want to know what a mute fruit tastes like. All of that packaged food, no, there's no chance. I don't care how good your packaging process is. There is no way I'm trusting that after 200 years. Out of all of the Fallout games, which is your favorite? Well, I think it's probably safe to say that Fallout New Vegas is the best. For story, for the sheer joy of just being able to turn my brain off and play video games, it has to be Fallout 4. You've seen how many hours I have in Fallout 4. Compare that with how many hours I have in New Vegas. In your earlier videos, you referred to us and we a lot when talking about Gray Gaming. Who are the other members of the Gray Gaming production team? So you are correct. As Gray of Gray Gaming, I'm kind of the public face or public persona of Gray Gaming as a whole, but I do have a very talented team of people backing me up. Now, I would never presume to speak for anyone, so I'll let them introduce themselves. First up, I would like you to meet my scriptwriter. Next is the Gray Gaming video editor. And most recently, we have hired a musical coordinator / composer. Are you getting tired of this bit yet? I feel like you might be getting tired of this bit. Gray Gaming is and always has been a one-person operation. I'm not quite sure why I initially chose to go with plural pronouns. I don't know whether it's just because that's what every gaming channel that I watched on YouTube did, or maybe I was just underestimating how quickly or to what scale this channel would grow when I thought maybe someday I would actually be able to afford a production team. But regardless of the why, it's always been big ol' me. Now, there are 3 people who have helped me out greatly along the way, and I did want to give them a shout out without violating their privacy online. The first is a former coworker of mine who did an incredible job producing the logos for Gray Galaxies, Gray Gaming, and Gray Gadgets, and also for the various banners and images that you see on my channel and in my intros. I couldn't be happier with the graphics she created, and I will definitely be utilizing her services in the future if I ever need more branding materials created. Another person I wanted to give a shout out to is a very longtime friend who took the time to drive his entire family down to my area, and as his poor wife had to figure out how to entertain 2 toddlers in my bachelor pad, while the 2 of us just kind of went to work figuring out how to set the filters better, work on better mic placement, and working on my music recording setup. So you may have noticed the backtrack here, as well as my last Legends of the Mojave and my complete-ish guide to robot design, are not using OST music anymore, and that's all due to his efforts helping me get an actual recording quality studio set up. The third and final shout out I want to give is to the man, the myth, the slightly glowing and radioactive Rad King. When I was first experimenting with console commands, I wasn't very good at it, and there were a lot of little tweaks I needed to be using in order to get my video quality up, but I just didn't know what they were. I didn't know the proper questions to ask, and so as I would watch videos by people like the Nth Apple and the Epic Nate 315, I just kept getting more and more frustrated that they could make these beautiful slow panning shots and I was doing something that looked like I was traveling at the speed of sound. And so one day I was watching a Rad King video and I saw one of those nice slow pan out shots, and kind of a little bit out of frustration, just kind of venting, but also wanting to give him a compliment on his recording quality, I just asked a question in the comment section, like, how do you get that footage? And I didn't expect him to actually reply. At the time, I think he was over 50,000 subscribers already, but much to my surprise, he not only responded, like the 2 of us ended up sharing emails back and forth, and he really helped me develop my initial skill set that helped me move away from just solely being a settlement walkthrough video and actually producing the content that has made Gray Gaming, that has put it on the map. My 5 easy fixes, my settlement ranking videos, my flora and fauna video that nobody watched. All of those are due entirely to the skills that Rad King taught me, and I can honestly say if it hadn't been for him taking the time to help a fan and a budding YouTuber and actually help lift me up, there just would not be any Gray Gaming. So to Rad King, you deserve 2 of these, and I hope that the mushroom cloud is bigger than the thumb. So now something special just for you. So I said I had a surprise if you stuck around to the end, and congratulations, you've made it. Ad Victoriam, brother. I mean, I would say sister, but statistically speaking, that's probably not the case. So I wanted to let you in on a couple secrets that I'm working on, one of which is a major shift in direction for this channel, and I'm actually a little terrified about the number of requests that are going to come in when people see that I'm doing this. But first, let's go with an easier one. In the next couple of weeks, I plan on releasing a video that takes a pretty familiar segment from my channel and apply it to a video game that I haven't discussed much on this channel. Can you guess what it is? As for the big shift, the thing I swore I would never do on Gray Gaming, well, it may take a few months. I'm kind of waiting for some bug fixes to go in before I can actually start work on it, but I'll let you draw your own conclusions.